Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Community Church of Boston. Sorry, we're a little late in getting started. We have a really incredible, exciting program this morning. We welcome all these friends and guests and new friends from Afghanistan this morning. And we also welcome Michael Sheridan, filmmaker, and very excited to welcome everybody. We always start with the lighting of a candle, but I couldn't find the candle as usual. And so I'm just lighting this match and bringing us together for this morning's program. Oh, it went out, but you get the picture. And I just want to start with a little song to bring us together. It goes, "Men of anger, men of war." No, I'm not. Am I muted? I don't think so. Am I muted, Michael?
You're good.
I'm being heard. My heart is filled with love. Tell me what you are fighting for. My heart is filled with love. This death I see won't make me numb. My heart is filled with love. Every boy a mother's son. My heart is filled with love. Raise your voices, spread the news. My heart is filled with love. Buddhist, Christian, Muslim, Jew. My heart is filled with love. They all teach the golden rule. My heart is filled with love. Do unto others as you have them do. Filled with love. Men of anger, men of war. My heart is filled with love. Folks, we welcome you. We have a full program and we're going to just get right started, go right into it. Skip the announcement, skip everything, just tell you to be in touch with Community Church of Boston, find out about upcoming programs. We have other films coming up. We have other exciting Sunday programs as well, Friday concerts, and just be with us. Come visit us at this auditorium that's now full of books. And we're trying to find the books that we're going to keep and find a place for the rest of them. And it's a very exciting time here because we're welcoming people back to the auditorium. This is your house. Come and enjoy this building, this place. Enjoy our lunch after each Sunday service with Luis Guzman. And I'm just going to go ahead and bring up our board member, Ed Pazanese, who alerted us to the work of Michael Sheridan and community-supported films. And Ed will tell us more and about Michael, and we'll get on with the program that has a whole bunch of participants, and we're just very excited. My name is Dean, by the way, and just so glad to welcome you here. So Ed, come up here and take the seat and tell us, introduce us to Michael. Take your mask off.
Yeah, right. Good morning, I'm Ed Pazanese, and it's my honor to introduce Michael Sheridan. Michael Sheridan founded and directs currently community-supported films, which has helped people tell their life stories from all over the world. He's also produced many documentaries around the world, including for Oxfam America. It's my pleasure to say welcome.
Thank you so much, Dean. And it's wonderful to be here with the community church. Did I say thank you, Dean? I meant to say thank you, Ed, who has been, in touch with CSFilm. He's a great educator in town and has done a lot with art education in Boston. But also thank you to Dean Stevens, thank you to Crystal Rollins Jackson, and to all of the folks at Community Church for welcoming us. And it's, my great pleasure to be able to be with my Afghan colleagues, many of whom I have not actually seen in many months. We have obviously been communicating constantly, but not always seeing each other. So it's wonderful to be together with some of our folks. So I'm going to go quickly through a number of topics because frankly, there are quite a few topics we could talk about in regards to the complexity of Afghanistan today and in terms of its very challenged history. But I need to introduce community-supported film, give you an understanding of how we came to work with these good people, introduce the films. We're going to watch 4 films, and then talk a little bit about the conditions that are facing Afghans right now, since Afghanistan has fallen out of the news quite a bit. And really then, of course, priority is to get your questions, your discussion points for the Afghans who are with us. And we'll go from there. So just to give you a little bit of an understanding of community-supported film and how it ended up working in Afghanistan. It started in 2010 in Afghanistan, and its mission is to work with local voices, people of the place, and to bring their perspective through the films and the stories they tell. So we're usually working with under or misrepresented communities and having them produce their stories on the social and economic issues in their community. Very importantly, it's not only a training program for documentary filmmaking, it's not only a filmmaking project from their perspective, it's also very importantly a public engagement project and using the films that they make for community dialogue, from town halls to the halls of Congress, from policymakers to communities who can pressure for perhaps new policies or behavior as needed. So the public engagement aspect of our work is as important in events like this as the actual process. Our mission is really driven by the concept that peace, prosperity, democracy, they are so dependent on both socially critical producers of media as well as local perspectives. I am a big believer that a lot of the reasons we're in the troubles we're in terms of our divided country, our complex and more complex world, is more and more communities getting less and less informed by people who are actually close to the issues. And we really need to focus on getting the local perspective. It's what allows us to put pressure on people to make responsible decisions, both about their community, about the country, and how we govern ourselves. CSFilm has done 3 projects since 2010. The Afghanistan project, which we're going to see evidence of today. Then we did a project in Haiti. And then the most recent project was with new immigrants and refugees here in the United States, New Immigrants and Refugee Visions. The first project, as I mentioned, 2010, Afghanistan. And I went in 2009 and then went back and started to work on an independent film and realized that this was the place that I needed to start a project that I had been conceiving of for many years, frankly, since the beginning of when I had become a documentary filmmaker, and realized that I was being sent by broadcasters and NGOs to places like Bangladesh, Ethiopia, Bolivia, to tell their story. We have still a very colonial top-down media system. Our news is driven by a system that does not really respect the local perspectives, does not respect the capacity of reporters in country to do the storytelling. And I mean, I realized from my very first project in Bangladesh that I had a fantastic Bangladeshi crew, camera person, co-producers, and there I was as a white man from the United States doing the story production. And I certainly have a role. We have a role to translate and make understandable across so many boundaries and borders what's going on in other places. But we need to strengthen and we need to listen to the voices of others and how they are dealing with their issues and problems. So this is the mission of CSFilm, and this is what we did with the first project in Afghanistan. a training of 5 weeks with an amazing group of 10 storytellers from Afghanistan. And they went ahead and during the training produced 10 short films, 3 of which we're going to see today. The first of the 3 films from the collection is called L is for Light, D is for Darkness by Hasibullah Asmati, who is with us today. Now, interestingly, that is a story from 2010 looking at the issues of refugees coming back to the country and on their own starting a whole new school program for girls and children in their villages. What's really shocking is that, frankly, now today we're in a very similar situation. Education is once again being shut down by the Taliban. After 20 years of conflict by the West, we have not moved forward. Right now, again in Afghanistan, those refugees returning in the aughts and the early teens once again are leaving the country or being displaced by great numbers. I have been involved in the very act of trying to help people get out of Afghanistan since August of last year, and know people, quite a few people, who are among the 5.7 to 6 million people who are now in host communities in the neighboring countries all around Afghanistan, who have evacuated, fled from the complexities. The second film that we're going to see is an image from a tear, Searching for a Path by Reza Sahel, who also is joining us. And in 2010, he captured this story of a banana salesman dealing with extreme unemployment issues in a country whose economy was barely struggling to survive. And now, of course, we know once again the economy has collapsed. The banking system has unfortunately imploded, and we're dealing now with news coming out of Afghanistan of a terrible, terrible crisis that should not be happening. The third film that we're going to see is by Aqeela Rezai, who is also joining us. The Road Above, a story about a woman who faced extreme economic difficulty and a husband who was addicted to heroin and who disappeared, as you'll see in the story. And here, once again, just this week in the news, the poppy crop of Afghanistan being an international issue with the Taliban, stating that they're going to raise these crops. And while the poppy needs to be removed from Afghanistan, it cannot be done without agricultural support. It cannot be done when the actual farmers who are subsistence farmers, barely surviving, they're not making the money on this crop, others are. They need the support to be able to transition to some other crop and can't just simply have their crops raised to the ground and their lives turned upside down. So these films that we're going to be seeing today speak to the challenges that Afghans have faced over the decades. And once again, we need to step forward and be responsible as a country for how we're responding to Afghanistan. It is not the fault of the Afghan public that Afghanistan, the general public, that Afghanistan is labeled now being led by a government of terrorists or a government that will not be recognized by the international community. I hope that we can look at these films with a broad understanding that we need to once again be advocates for Afghans and to take responsibility for the last 20 years and how we've left the country and the challenges that that's creating for the local population. So we're going to turn over, watch these films, and then we'll come back. Please put into the chat questions that come up for you. That'll help us inform which direction to go with the discussion. And we look forward to coming back to that after these 4 films.
نیست. همشیدار کدامش بیکار در خانه ما یک شیراز برد جانه که چل تا ساعت 11 بجه یکشان بیاین از خاطر مشکلات مکتب خیر اگر شگفه یا ویده قلر قلر کجاست زود باز بیای خیر است خوشید همه خوب هستن زنی را جد خوشید بیکار است نیتف خانه ما بیاید سیس ماما سلام سلام علیکم خوب هستی جانک جو پشتونگل است پشتونگل گفتم یک نفرتان بیاین خانه ما شیراز وقت 11 بجه خاطر مشکل مکتب پردگرم خبر
آله خود تندور بگن
خیلی تندور تخلص سلام علیکم استی جان چی حال داری خوب استی جانتی خوب استی حالت خوبه شکر شما خوب است زنده باشید ما تو رو پرسان کنم چرا در مکتب نمیمانی که بیایم دخترات زیاد شوق علاقه دارم
بیادرش نزاد نداره
بیادرش نمیمانم ما خب او دفعه دیگه که من برادرش گفتم که اجازه بده که چادری بپوشه
این
بیایم
مکتب خونده است بس است میگم بخاطر
تا شش خونده
تا شش خونده است بس است ولی می کارخانه خود کنه
برشان بگو آمده بود نمی استادشان گفت اجازه بده برش خیر است ای چیلت نمیمانی چادری کدگی بیا
پدرش بیای برادرش بیای با اینجا میگویم شو
صحیح زمین که مشوره کنه گپ بزنه بازم گشتم هم میایم باز بر پدرش بیادرش میگم که میگه بان دختره که زیاد علاقه داره بیاید مکتب بخونه رفتم برمان خداحافظ ما گلم خودتان ما گل اگرم
این روز بودنش ما چون میدن میدیا یک دفعه دیگه خدا نیتا
کابل رفتم شما کدامتان بیکار نیست
تلاشی داریم دیگه
دخترای مکتب رفتن
مکتب
اگر بیکار شده 11 بچه خیلی یکتان بیاین خداحافظ چه کنیم حالا خودت میایی یا مادر جانه
بس اگه شد خودم میایم
خانم کوکویت هست برو میگه
زیاد
استدام بدرس افتاری است اسمی کن یکی شاباس بلند بگو بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم از پشت
نون نام برادر من منیر است منیر
کتابتون سعی کنه کتابتون سعی کنه
نارنج
خرید آفرین چک کنیم و یادتان است که کارخانگیتان هر چهارشنبه میدید درست نال بخیر درس نو میخوانیم درس امروزی ما و شما چیست؟ حرف واو آفرین وحید تربوز آورد بیاییم اینجا که ما آمدیم برگشتیم که اصلا مکتب دخترانه هیچ نبود که ما دخترای خود در مکتب داخل بسازیم شما متوجه باشید طرف باز پدر اولادای من همراه یک دکتر سیب ششتن نمای دخترها را گرفتن که دخترای ما علاقمند مکتب هستن. باز یک دو خیمه برای زیاد پیشنهاد کرده بودیم که خیمه و تخته مکتب برشون بیارن. باز همین قلعه سیدار ما خود ما پیش ما بود، ما آماده ساختیم که باید دخترای جای بسیار گوشه است که آواز زیاد کس نمیشنوه تا تانستن این دخترها بیان همینجا آزادشان درس بخونن. در این قسمت نشته که بالاتر که یادست نمیست به خاطر کوچه خوب اینجا ای چی شد؟ وهاب حرفایش باز برشان بگو.
واو پورم دال پورم واو پورم دال پورم.
چون شما خبر دارین که به خیر وقت امتحانای سالانه است، همین زیادتر کوششتان طرف دخترها باشه که درسای خود بخوانن که به خیر کامیاب شوند. همین ناکامی از یا خدا نخواستم بر خودشان رنج آورستن بر ما و شما. خیر است، هر قدر کار خانه بود به دوش خود میگیریم ما و شما.
شاگرده علاقمند هستن، ما پدر یا برادر، پدر چه اجازه بده برادرش
اجازه نمیتن.
بله
این حال ما و شما رای همین حالش پیدا کنیم. این وقتی که ما و شما یک جای میشنیم، یک شورا میگیریم، مثلا گپ میزنیم در یک محفل، در یک عروسی، یک جایی میباشیم، همین از مادرایشان باید تقاضا کنیم که باید این دخترکای جوانی که شوق علاقه که در مکتب دارن اینا رو اجازه بدن.
مشکلش پرسان میکنیم که برادرش نمیمونه یا پدرش میشه که خود ما بریم به آزر به چیزش که باید.
بله چرا دختری که مثلا جوان شد در مکتب نمیمانی؟ کدام مرد نامارم نیست، هر استاد که هست مثل پدرشان مادرشان است و دخترای جوانی که بیچاره از کابل تا به اینجا میان تدریس میکنن همونا هم خوش میشن. اول سیمینا جان من خودم امروز گفتم که اگر به خاطر چادری ممانعت میکنن که تو دویلوت نرو، چادری بپوش بیا. صحیح است؟ اجازه تا خودم باز میرم امرای مادر جانت امرای پدرت گپ میزنم و یک دفعه دیگه امرای برادرت گپ زدم، گفتم خیر بانشه که دیگه شاگردان روی چادری میان در مکتب میام امرای چادری میتونه که بیان. بله که باید ما آبرومندانه به هر جایی که کار میکنیم وظیفه اجرا میکنیم خداوند بی پرده نکنه، با آبرو با عزت باشه.
در کارهای خانه و مکتب سهم میگی پرسان میکنه
خانی موجود
را فرق کرده بتوانید ما همیشه کوشش میکنیم
تو گوشتار بگیر اجرا میکنم. از طرف صبح خمیر میکنم، نان در تندور پخته میکنم و بعد از چاشت مثلا نان خورده و نماز خوانده ما در طرف مکتب میرم و مشکلات های بیرون ما که حل میسازم. مثلا یک روز بر خود پلان جور میکنم که این روز از طرف صبح ما باید نان پخته نکنم، در باغا بگردم مشکل خانما رو حل بسازم. همیال رفتم خانه عارف کاکا به خاطر هم دخترکش، هم دختر دمی خود مسجد تا سن 6 خان کورسای ازدیو بود پیش معلم صاحب عبدالشافی خان. بعد از او آمد پیش من گفت که از خدا میشه از تو میشه مرد این مکتب شامل کن. هر دفعه که خانهشان میرم یک ممانعت میکنن.
ما هم در منبرا و
میوازه که میکنن در روزای جمعه باید برشان گفته شد.
و
و ما در مکتب برشان
بله
میریم.
برید مکتب در خانه هایشان همونطور خانه به خانه شما
بخشش باشه زحمت داده بتانه مناسب بسیار زیاد
خداوند
ببخشید.
ببخشیدانه این وظیفه ایمانی وجدانی ما شماست که فامیل ها را توجهشان به طرف درس تعلیم و آموزش و دین و دنیا جلب توجهشان بکنیم که تا خوشبخت شوند. خدای ناخواسته از تاریکی های جهل خلاص شوند، به روشنی ها سوق داده شوند، چون طلب علم فرض از بالای هر مرد زن مسلمان است.
دایر 4 تا کم نیست ماما جان. نمی صرفه به خود ما قیمت آمده. کاش که ارزان دیدی ارزان میفروخت. نه ماما جان. دایر 6 تا نمیشه.
دایر 10 تا کلا.
نه. دایر 4 تا درجن 30 روپیه.
دایر 10 تا.
اون دایر 5 تا لالا میتن. نه ماما جان. دیگه کار نی مجبور است مجبوری که کل فرشین دیگه کار دسترسی نداریم. زمستان که بیکاری است مجبور است که بیکاری بارم که یک تعدادی زیاد گرمی نشده کله است بعد از اون کله هم خراب میشه دوباره سرمل چوک میری باز از کار بود کار منی نمودی بیکاری دیگه.
Dara para çok. Şu arta dara para değil çok. Dara para çok.
دورانی که طالبان بود اینجا هم دستفرشی میکردم بعد از چند وقت خیاطی کردم خیاطی هم نصرفید نچلید روزگارم نچلید دوباره آمدم دستفرشی کلفرشی.
چهار تا داره پدیره چون
اسکرا فقط این چیز منظورش اینه که شما پدره رو بند کردید مردم بسیار بیروبار ازدهام ایجاد میشه یگانه که رنج مبریم زی فعلا روی بازار از دیست پلیس اسکر اگه اینا زیاد آزار نکنه یک شینگی یا یک گوشه سرک بیته که همین جستا چی شما دیگه جای نروید یعنی این جستا چی دیگه جای رفتید روی سرک بیروبار کردید بازایی میکنم اگه همون گوشه رو تسلیم بیده در ما مونم اینجا استاد میشی ولی از این دواندن که و ایداد از ما بهتر کراچی ها زیاد اذیت نمیکنه، باز زوری کراچی هایی که به حساب شناسیت داره باز اونا را زیاد اذیت نمیکنه، زیاد نمیده اونه، باز بازیش حق میتر نمیده اونه. دوران اولی که دولت انتقالی اومد او قدر اذیت نمی‌کرد، خوب بودم. سال دوم هم خوب بود، کارم خوب بود. ولی رفته رفته دولت خراب شد. رفته رفته میتر مردم بسیار اذیت و آزار، یک بهانه‌ای حق و ناق می‌گوید. پنج تا در پدیره پنج در پر پنج تا دیره پنج پنج تا در پدیره پنج در پر پنج تا دیره پنج درجن 25 پنج تا در پدیره پنج پنج تا کلش یک چیز بشه نه نمیشه دو تا دلت میگیری دلت نمیگیری جنجال نکن دیگه
پنج برای
دوینیم تا نمی صبر چی
چند نیاش
دایره پنج تا کلش زیاد کدامش گرفتی دایره پنج زحمت بکشم تا که بچه ها کلان شد درس بخونه، درس رو باید تکمیل کنه، یه تکمیل تا نکنه یه هم کار درست نیست. باید هم درس مکتب بخونه، هم پانتون باید بخونه. اولین تصمیم که است باید درس باید بشه. او رنجی که ما کشتیم نباید او بکشم. اینا خود تو بلد استی که سر سرک یک دقیقه ایستاد شده نمیتونیم، یک لقه از ترافیک میخوریم، یک دو لقه دیگه از اسکر میخوریم. چرا؟ باید اونا اولین فشاری که بریم تا آخرین قدرت فشار میاریم که باید درس بخون. وقتی که درس خون اگر او دکتر شوه هم نه لغت اسکر نه لغت ترافیک نه کدام زجر ستم دیگه بالا جلسیم یک دوله قرصدار هستم فعلا قرصدار هستم من که بسیار رنج مبرم قرصداری خریدم اول که بیشتر بود دو نیم لگر تا تقریبا 50,000 پیش خلاص دو لگر پیش بود
دکتر
جوهردم که گبی آسان نیه اقلا اول سرمایه میخواه و سرمایه که نباشه آدم فقط این میره که روز کار منیم مثال که این روز کار رو 200 یا 300 یا 400 که میمونه و این رو فقط خرج خانه میکنیم دیگه سرمایه نداریم که اقلا یک دکان بگیریم یا یک از او بیشتر یک مغازه خوب لوکس باشه یا یک فروشگاه خوب باشه نه پول داشت باشم بهتر روز بگر روز تا شام سر سرک ایستاد نمیشم خاک چارا نمیخوام اقلا یک دکان خردترک میگیرم
داره پره چهار دیره چهار
یک تبنگ دو تبنگ بازی رضا اگه فرصتی بود یا زیاد پیشکدونه بود یک دو تبنگ میشه بازی وقتا که زیاد بیرو بار بود یک تبنگ میشه والا دیگه همون خودر میشه که بخور و نمور دیگه تو وایداد نداره که از یک 2 روپیه 10 روپیه ذخیره کنی
داره پره 4 دیره چهار 4 دیره داره پره 4 دیره پدیره 4 دیره پدیره 4 داره پره 4 دیره 4
خاله جون کاش کابل بانک بودی کمی بخشش جایزه بده 30 روپیه خاله جون این دیگه بتم دیگه پلاستیک بتم دایره پایین جانم پنجره زدت چی؟ دمک شهید تو باشه
5 دیره
هر جایی که یک لقمه نان پیدا شه این مهم نیست که کابل باشه دهات باشه یا شهر باشه هر چی شهر باشه یا دهات باشه فرق نداره فقط نان پیدا شه یک لقمه نان که پیدا شد اون خودش هم به کابل هستم تمام لذت دارم زندگی خیلی لذت میبرم وقتی که نان پیدا نشد ولو که داخل قصر بشی فایده نداره
داره پره 6 درجه بسرف داره پره 6 بسرف درجهش بسرف داره پره 6 داره پره 6
دایره 4 تا درجن سیری نه مامان
4 درف داره پره 4 دایره 4 ماما درجان سیره ها بیا اینجا بیا
یک ذره نان بخو مربال بیتنیم ما که دن تلالم دیگه چه قرار بوسط نوقت میشه خیر بریم روز نوقت دار آدرش
مثلا ما که صبح که چادری خود از خانه سر کردم برم 1000 نفر گاهی 1000 نفر میشنم ما که مرم مثلا مردم مرا میگه که یا مثلا در بدکاری مرا خدا نخواست باز دیگه ظرف من کارم نشه باز ما ظرف کارم میشیم شیر نفت از خانه باز که کیامت با شریزه پلیخ بگید که از خطر دیق نهید یا اینجا در دریاولی در میکش خدا حافظ را خدا حافظ مادر من قد مادر زندگی من فعلا دیگه مادر من ضعیفه بیچاره کارمار نمیتونه چیمش ضعیفه فشار در خودش به خاطر انجام میدم که همین گفتم که رای خانه رو که برادرایم رای منو پیسه میده به خاطر خرج خانه دیگه مثلا چای خریدن میشه مادرم پیش دکتر بردن میشه برام چیزا دیگه این که مردای کلگیشیم زوری مردایش هزارگی مسته دیگه مردم خوب رفتار منه مثلا قدرتمو بعد رد نمگم
خانه دور رقم از موری بیاش چای بخوره
ما 3 سال شده عروسی کردیم دیگه 1.5 سال قد شوهر خودم دیگه بعد از 1.5 سال بعد آمدم خانه مادر خودم شوهرم دیگه پودری بود دیگه مثلا یک دفعه چیز کردیم تداویش کردیم باز نشد باز رفتن قدی رفقای خودی گال بخی سرگم اید نمیفهمم کجا هستن موادی که پیچکاری میزنه خود از او بخی استفاده هم هم بخی اونجا فاق کرده بشه مثلا دیگه غمخورم نیه که بو پاله وره یک مادر داشت که مادرش فوت کرده
باشه جان شاید تو خود از من ای پردری نه نمیشناسی یاره
نه سیاه نه سیاه اینجا رو زیاد خانم پالیدی ما مقصد نبود شاید سیل برده باشه اما سیل برده باشه خطر است دیگه رنگش نه
اول میخوام که دربار خدا شکر من نماز خدا میخوانم بعد از میگم که امیر روز خیره که ای سالم که تیر نشد سرشی میگم امیر روز خوش تیر شوه مادر ما خوش باشه جور باشه دیگه And
Thank you for participating in those 4 films. Before I introduce the folks who are with us, I did want to just say I did notice that there are quite a few folks who have been very supportive of CSFilm's work with the evacuation of Afghans. And just to update a little bit, and I'll talk specifically in terms of the folks who are actually with us today, but in general, we've been working with about 24 families who had a relationship with CSFilm directly while we were working in Afghanistan. And that's about 121 individuals, working with them on logistical issues, legal issues, financial support, both from very, very practical issues in August of trying to help get people onto planes or overland out of Afghanistan. Or literally, we have 9 pro bono lawyers that are helping out with asylum applications, both in the US and elsewhere. CSFilm is part of a coalition of about 180 organizations that have been working night and day since August on evacuation issues. And as this last film so poignantly demonstrates, on the really painful issues of the fact that so many are still in Afghanistan and in hiding and moving constantly to try and stay safe. At this point, of the 24 families that we were working with originally, 9 families are still in Afghanistan, and some of those themselves are constantly in hiding and in movement. 2 of the families have gotten into Iran, which frankly is not an easy situation either. The Iranian government nor people are particularly welcoming at all to Afghans. One of those families had a new baby last month in Iran, was not able to get health services or birth certificate or anything of the like. 3 of the families are in Pakistan now. Although I say that 3 were in Pakistan, 1 family last week had to return to Afghanistan because they could not afford the greater expenses of housing and food in Pakistan. That family also had a new baby about a month ago. Another family I just learned yesterday were evicted from Pakistan back into Afghanistan because of visa issues. And that's just a terrible, terrible situation. We worked so hard to get them out of Afghanistan, human rights workers who are at great risk, and now they're back in Afghanistan, I learned last night. There are 8 families, and that includes a bunch of the folks that are with us today who did get on planes. You saw those harrowing news reports all through the end of August of airplanes leaving the chaos of Kabul airport. And we were able to help some. We were not directly involved in all, but 8 families did get on those planes and are in various places, mostly in Europe. Since August, frankly, there's only 1 family, Hasib's family, who is with us, who was able to be helped by the Germans to get out of Afghanistan into Pakistan, and then he is in Germany now. And there's 1 other gentleman who managed to get overland into Pakistan, but I'm sorry, no, there's 1 other woman actually who is the wife of a translator for the US military, who is related to Aqeela, who is with us tonight. And she has been in Afghanistan. He's been in California for many years, separated. And we were able to help get her with the US assistance out of Afghanistan. And she actually arrives on Tuesday to be reunited with her husband, which is one of the few but wonderful positive stories we have. There's been a lot of generosity. Thank you so much to the donors that are among you. We've sent $25,000 to the 8 families that have been in Afghanistan, or to those in Pakistan and Iran to try and help with the very, very difficult financial situation, food situation that they're dealing with. We've also, rather surprisingly, we might argue, have had to spend $8,000 on legal fees to pay the US government for the fees to file asylum. But we've spent, the Afghan organizations have given the US government close to $32 million now for what's called humanitarian parole applications to try and help Afghans. And it's kind of criminal, frankly, that the US government, having created a lot of this situation, is expecting us to pay this money, $575 per individual, per family member, to file for humanitarian parole. So joining us today, first I'll introduce Jamal Aram. Jamal was the translator for the 2010 training, and then he became CSFilm's coordinator of programs. And I'm thrilled to have him with us. He's been, devoted to CSFilm's work for many years and just always there to help out. He's going to serve as translator again today. Jamal was, soon after he worked with us, he managed to get himself into college in the United States, and has subsequently gone on to writing school and is soon to publish his first collection of short stories, fiction short stories, an author and filmmaker, and we're thrilled to have him with us. He is with his family now in Canada, where they have received asylum. Joining us, the maker of L is for Light, D is for Darkness, the first film that you saw, Hasib Asmati, who I mentioned is now in Germany, where he's seeking asylum before the collapse of the rise of the Taliban last year. He was working as a filmmaker in northern Afghanistan for Afghanistan TV in the north. Reza Sahel, second film that we saw, Searching for a Path, is joining us. He was one that was able to get out with our assistance somehow. With the craziness of the times in August, he got on a flight with a Polish flight, was in Poland, now is in Germany, where he's seeking asylum with his 4 children and wife. And he is a renowned photographer and filmmaker. He was part of the Third Eye Photojournalist Collective in Afghanistan, and most recently worked for the Aga Khan Foundation as their documentarian. Also joining us is Aqeela Rezai. Aqeela is a renowned TV and cinema actress in Afghanistan, or was, unfortunately, having also to evacuate. She was evacuated in August by the French and is now in France, but we are still working on trying to help her get to a place where she will be able to come through some of the asylum opportunities to the United States with her 3 sons who are with her in France. She was the filmmaker of The Road Above, the third film that we saw. And finally, I'm thrilled that Bacher is able to join us. I don't see him right now in my view, but I'm pretty sure Bacher is the 4th film we saw, House to House. He's in Afghanistan, and he is a self-taught filmmaker. As you saw, that is his, I believe, 2nd short film that he's made. He made it just the beginning of this year. He is a high school math and physics teacher, hasn't been paid for teaching since the rise of the Taliban, and obviously the education situation is in great chaos. So I would love to open it up to questions. I might just start it off with, let me just also say that I'm thrilled, I should have said, sorry, Wahid Zaman also joined us. I was not aware that Wahid was going to be able to join us. Wahid also was part of our training and filmmaking program. And Wahid is in Germany. He also was evacuated through the Polish route and has now moved and is looking for asylum in Germany. I saw Jafar, I believe. Jafar was our coordinator for, I haven't talked about it, but we started a program in 2021, and Jafar Ibrahimi was working with us as a coordinator, and glad he was evacuated through, well, originally with the Polish, but he got on an Italian plane in the chaos and is in Italy and seeking still to try and get to the United States. Oh, Basir Bita is also with us. Basir was the director of our 2021 program in Afghanistan. He is now seeking asylum. He was evacuated by another organization to Canada and is seeking asylum in Canada. So all these folks have really strong and powerful experiences, of course. And I would like to open it up to questions. I might just get it started because I haven't been able to review the chat. I'm sure there are some questions there, but I would like maybe just to start just picking a name out of the hat because we have so many good possibilities, but maybe Reza, you could begin by just speaking. You have 4 young children. I know that we have talked extensively about your choices. You had to leave and left everything behind, left your car on the side of the road, fought your way through those horrible crowds at the wall to the airport, got into the airport, went through some terrible trauma, and managed to get on that plane to Poland, and now moved your family to Germany and have not received asylum. So far, you've been denied asylum in Germany. We're, in the midst of trying to figure out next steps. But maybe, Reza, you might start us off and just speak to your experience and what you think our audience should understand about the challenges you're facing, the challenges for your children, and the hopes you have in terms of what we might be able to do to help in terms of getting our government to understand the situation.
رضا جان گرفتی مسئله را یا ما ترجمه کنم؟
به صورت عمومی گرفتم، خیلی دقیق متوجه نشدم. اوکی.
دقیقی بود که تو با فامیل خود از افغانستان بر شدیم، رفتیم همون شبی که رفتی میدان و با تمام مشکلاتی که بود موتر خلاب سر استاد کردی، خود رساندی به دروازه و از اونجا داخل میدان شدی و رفتی پولند، بعدم جرمنی. و ای که در جرمنی تا هنوز کیس پناهندگی تو قبول نشده، رد شده یک بار. و ای که چی چالش‌هایی را تو فامیل تو در اونجا امروش مقابل هستن و دیگه مخصوصا اولادای تو که جوانن، ریزن، اونا با چی چالش‌های مثلا مکتب نرفتن و یا مواجه هستن. و دیگه ای که اگر تجربیات قصه کنی و ای که آمریکایایی که اینجا هستن اینا چطور میتونن کمک کنن که یا دولت آمریکا چطور میتونه کمک کنه که تو از شرایطی که فعلا هستی به یک شرایط بهتر برسی.
خب با سلام خدمت همه دوستایی که در برنامه حضور دارن و تشکر از اینکه ما عضوی از این گروه هستم و امروز شما صحبت میکنم. کوتاه صحبت بکنم جمال جان یا یکی نه یک دفعه
همین کوتاه خوبه. Reza says hi to everyone and he says that he's very happy and very proud to be part of the CSFilm family.
خب ما تاریخ فکر میکنم که دقیقاً یادم نیست، تاریخ 24 بود یا 23 آگوست طرف میدان هوایی کابل رفتیم و موتر یک کس دیگه موتر یک کس دیگه رو ما گرفته بودیم، رفتیم همونجا دم در نزدیکی دروازه میدان و خب خیلی فاصله داشتیم اما خب بنده خدای را ازش کمک خواستم که بالاخره موتر چی بکنه، در یک جای استاد بکنه و همراه ما، چون ما تنها بودم و 4 تا طفل خورد، واقعا خیلی سخت بود. ما از بین از جمعیت تیر میشدیم و از او کمک خواستم و او همراه ما همکاری کرد.
The night that Reza and his family went to the airport, as probably you've seen, it was chaos. And then he asked a friend of his to drive Reza and his family to the airport. And then they parked the car and he asked his friend if he could help him with his kids because the 4 children were young, to help them get through the crowd to the gate.
و همچنان برادر من همراه خود برده بودم که چون که حجم جمعیت زیاد بود و ممکن بود که بچهای ما زیر پای شود و همچنان وحید زمان همراه از اونا یک جا شدیم. وحید زمان یعنی تلاش کردیم که امی کلانایی که هستیم، کلانا از اطفال خود ما مواظبت بکنیم و از بین جمعیت بگذاریم.
So in addition to the friend that Reza asked for help, he also asked his brother to accompany them. And along the way, they also met up with Wahid Zaman's family, and the elders tried to take care of the children so that they don't get lost in the crowd.
و چندین بار نزدیک بود که زیر پاهای جمعیت دیگر له شد، ولی خب خدا رو شکر بخیر تیر شد و از او وضعیت بخیر گذشتیم. چندین بار نزدیک بود که زیر پای جمعیت شدیم چون که حجم جمعیت خیلی زیاد.
The crowd was so big and there were a few places that they almost got lost and under the stampede of people, but they finally managed to get to the gate.
و نهایتاً امو یک رمزی که همراه نیروهای پولندی آقای مایکل شریدن همراه ما شریک ساخته بود، او رمز را ما همراه نیروهای پولندی نشان دادیم و اونا امو پاسپورت ها و تذکره های ما را چک کرده و نهایتاً همراه از ما یک جا شدیم و تانستیم که در دروازه ورودی میدان بریم و داخل شدیم.
Thanks to Michael, who had worked through his connections that he had and arranged this plan with the Polish. The Polish had given them a kind of a passcode that you would repeat at the gate to the soldiers there, and then you would show your documents, your passports, and if you were lucky, they would let you in. And Reza and his family were one of the lucky ones.
و داخل میدان ما همون شبی که داخل میدان شدیم، همون شبش ما را از توسط هواپیمای نظامی از کابل انتقال داد به ازبکستان و صبح از همون روز از ازبکستان ما را انتقال داد در کشور پولند.
That same night they got onto a Polish military aircraft, and then they had a layover in Uzbekistan, and then from Uzbekistan they went to Poland.
و مدت 15 روز ما در کشور پولند بودیم. بعد از 15 روز یعنی ما کلا سراسیمه بودیم، گیج بودیم، هنوز تصمیم گرفتن نمی‌تونستیم ما اصلا کجا هستیم، چه کار باید بکنیم و چطور شد. یعنی یک شبه همه چیز تغییر کرد و به خاطر از ما یعنی تصمیم گرفتیم که بیایم در کشور جرمنی.
For 15 days that Reza says he and his family were in Poland, they were living in a state of shock and confusion because they couldn't really fathom what had happened to them. They had left everything they had worked for their whole life overnight, and all of a sudden they were in this new country that they did not know anything about, and they did not know what to do and how to proceed. So in terms of to find some sort of clarity and a direction, they went to Germany to start the asylum process.
و در کشور جرمنی که آمدیم برای درخواست یعنی برای درخواست پناهندگی بدیم، از اون زمان یعنی دقیقاً بگیم که تاریخ 12-13 سپتامبر بود، ما رسما خود را به عنوان پناهنده در اینجا ثبت کردیم و روند درخواست پناهندگی ما شروع شد. اما تا حالا مصاحبه ها، اینترویو های اولیه گذشته، اینترویوی اصلی هم تیر شده و متاسفانه خب درخواست پناهندگی ما در کشور جرمنی رد شده و تنها برای ما گفته که شما را از کشور جرمنی اخراج نمیکنیم به دلایل ازی که شما چی هستین، یعنی کشور شما هنوز وضعیت خوب نیست.
September 12th or 13th, Reza says that they, in Germany, they registered as refugees and applied for asylum. And they went through all rounds of interviews. And finally, their asylum case was, application was rejected. But the German government told them that they will not deport them yet because Afghanistan is not safe.
و چیزی که یعنی من همراه وکیل گرفتم و همراه وکیل که صحبت کردم، آنچه که وکیل امو جواب درخواست پناهندگی ما که آمده بود، اونا ورقه رو برای وکیل نشان دادم. وکیل گفتن که شما بیشتر عمومی راجع به وضعیت عمومی صحبت کردین و اسنادایی که دارین اسنادایتان کاملا درست هست، ولی چون که عمومی صحبت کردن اینا اصلا درخواست پناهندگی شما را نپذیرفته. و با وجود از اینکه من اسنادایی رو داده بودم، من برای کشور جرمنی 5 سال اخیر را در بزرگترین پروژه های جرمنی من کار کردم، خودم اسنادش کد نمبر پروژه را همه از ما مادرشان تحویل دادم.
این وکیل بعد از اینکه اپلیکیشن چی شده بود گرفتی یا قبل از اون؟
نه، بعد از اینکه اپلیکیشن آمد من وکیل گرفتم.
Okay. So after the application was rejected, Reza got a lawyer, and the lawyer went through the whole paperwork, and he said the reason that the application was rejected because Reza spoke very generally about the situation of Afghans, and he says that if you had, made this case your personal case, how your life is in danger, probably the German government would have accepted your asylum. And Reza has also worked the last 5 years that he was in Afghanistan. He worked with a German organization in Afghanistan, and he has all the documents to support that he was employed by the German NGO.
I'm going to interrupt for one moment because I want to thank Reza for giving us that, because this is the story of every person from Afghanistan that is out of Afghanistan, all very similar for people to understand, and the story of so many Afghans who have not been able to get out of Afghanistan. And just to spell it out a little bit further for our American audience here, the US government the Congress created a special provision called Priority 2 referrals to be able to get Afghan media makers and those who worked with NGOs out of the country and to the US. It's 8 months since they created that, and none of us have received any follow-up from the US government. I'm going to put, and I want to just make sure that one of the priorities is to figure out what we can do to help situations like Reza's, Aqeela's, and each person. I won't go through each name, but I'm putting in the chat a link to advocacy measures that I want to make sure get to people, because we have to get our government to come back to the table and to help people like Reza and the others among us. You can hear Reza's story with 4 children and a wife who have gone through this situation, who cannot exist in Afghanistan without being at great risk, are being denied basic asylum in a place like Germany. And I am unable, having filed all the papers and worked with many lawyers, I am unable to get the State Department, even though I'm a part of this very good coalition, none of us are able to get the State Department to really be responsive. So I've added to the chat some of the requests that we have for people in regards to these issues, to try and put pressure on various entities to get some action. And I know there are a few questions about what should we be doing at this point when Afghanistan is out of the news and people are not paying as much attention to that situation. And frankly, we have to write to our newspapers and we have to write to our legislators and ask what they're doing after 20 years of war and having given promises to people in terms of their risk level and their care, what responsibility they're taking for follow through. The Biden administration did not even mention Afghanistan in the State of the Union address. He refused to. He does not want it to be part of the conversation. And we need to push it back into the conversation. Otherwise, people, whether or not because of hunger and the famine in Afghanistan and the lack of response from a humanitarian perspective, or in terms of the legal and assistance issues for asylum that need to be taken care of. So I just want to make sure I get that out there and bring it back to Reza or to others who would like to speak to the issues that they're facing and what they wish. Jamal, you could just translate that generally, what they wish we would understand about the challenges they're facing and the needs they have to be able to move forward with stabilizing their lives.
مایکل میگه اگر به شکل بسیار فشرده بگوییم که این سوال بر تمام کسایی که در کشور سوم زندگی دارن فعلا یا در کشورهایی که فعلا هستن این است که مشکلات عمده شما چیه و کسایی مثل مایکل و آمریکایایی که در اینجا هستن و دولت آمریکا چطور چی کمک میتونن بکنن که وضعیت زندگی شما بهتر شد، چالش‌ها و پیشنهادات. هر کس میتونه جواب بده. رضا تو جواب میدی؟ بگو.
چالشی که ما دست فعلا امی وضعیت نامعلومی هست که نه در کشور جرمنی ما چه هستیم، درخواست ما قبول شده و از اون طرف از طرف دولت آمریکا هم برای ما تا هنوز هیچ کار انجام نشده و هنوز ما منتظر هستیم و معلوم هم نیست که آیا یعنی دولت آمریکا ما را در آمریکا ببره یا یکی مثلا درخواست ما رو بپذیره یا نپذیره و این وضعیت نامعلومی که وجود داره، این وضعیت که اصلا خیلی زیاد چی هست، آزاردهنده است.
امی وضعیت نامعلومه که میگه مثلا مثالای از این چیه؟ طفلای تو مکتب رفتن نمیتونن، خود مثلا کار پیدا نمیتونی. امی وضعیت نامعلومه یکم با مثالای واضح‌تر که مردم چی کنن؟
نه، اطفال ما فعلا مکتب میره. اطفال چون در کشور جرمنی یک چیزی هست که برای اطفال همیشه مکتب وجود داره. خود ما نمیتونیم مسافرت بکنیم چون که اجازه مسافرت نداریم. از امو شهر و از امو ایالت که هستیم از امو ایالت برآمده نمیتونیم. از طرف دیگه کار کردن نمیتونیم چون که ما مدرک چی نداریم. یک مدرک اقامه 6 ماهه داریم که 3 ماهش گذشته و 3 ماه دیگه وقت داره. بعد از 3 ماه باید دوباره بریم تمدید بکنیم. 6 ماه دیگه ممکنه یا 1 سال ممکن کمتر یا زیادتر تمدید بکنه و خود ما یعنی سردرگم هستیم، نمیفهمیم چی کار باید بکنیم چون که مطمئن نیستیم که آیا جرمنی ما رو میپذیره یا یکی ما واقعا مثلا آمریکا میریم و اونجا تثبیت میشیم و ما واقعا مثلا زحمت بکشیم برای آینده و برای زندگی خود.
Reza says that what is very hard for him is this being in like life in limbo that he is living right now. His kids can go to school thanks to the system that the German government has, but their family, they cannot travel outside of the city that they're living in, and he also cannot work because the papers that he has, it doesn't allow him to work. So, and then he also doesn't know whether to look for ways to get asylum, apply again for asylum in Germany, or the P2 applications in the US is going on. So he doesn't know where to put his focus in. They're just there. کسی دیگه از دوستا کسی میخواین گپ بزن؟ عاقله جان.
بله، سلام و روز همه بخیر. تشکر واقعا از شنیدن داستان همکارای عزیزم مثل رضا جان خیلی مایوس شدم. امیدوار هستیم که بخیر بحران به پایان برسه و مشکلاتشان حل شود. به هر صورت من کمک چالش های خود میگم و یک پیشنهادم دارم.
Good day to everyone, and also she says, I feel very sorry to hear the troubles that Reza and everybody else has gone through. She's going to speak about some of the challenges that she has, and also some opinions for how to move forward.
شروع کنم جمال جان؟
بفرمایید.
وضعیت ما در فرانسه، وضعیت ما و اولادم در فرانسه از نگاه اداری خیلی خوب پیش رفت و این مدت 8 ماه ما در تقریبا در 18 روز بعد از آمدن در فرانسه مصاحبه مشروع شد و بعد از 3.5 ماه ما قبولی کشور فرانسه را گرفتم که نه تنها ما و اون تعداد از هنرمندایی که همراه ما یک جا به کمک آقای محسن مخملباف و عتیق رحیمی داخل کشور فرانسه شده بودیم، بسیار به سرعت انجام شد و ما امیال از مهاجرین قبول شده کشور فرانسه هستیم. اما
So Aqeela and all the artists that went to that were evacuated to France, they got, or Aqeela says that she got, the interview process started 18 days after she arrived in France, and then 3.5 months later she got her application accepted. What again?
و یک چالش بسیار کوچک من احساس میکنم که تنها بر من نیست، بر تمام مهاجرینی که داخل فرانسه آمده و اون است که از نگاه مالی مبلغی که بر ما کمک میکنن ماهانه بسنده نیست و کسایی که فامیل دارن مثل ما که ما 3 تا پسر جوان همراه ما است و ما بسنده نیست و ما قسمی آمدیم همگی ما که امرای یک جور لباس آمدیم. اصلا امیال من کامپیوتر چیزا ندارم. از نگاه مالی ما با مشکلات در داخل فرانسه مواجه هستیم. من نمیفهمم شاید یا بعد از گرفتن همو تذکره میگه یا همو آیدی کارد میگه که بر ما میتن این مبلغ شاید تغییر بکنه و بسنده باشه بر ما. اما چالش بزرگی که ما داریم مویی است که زبان فرانسه خیلی سخت است. تا که ما زبان یاد نگیریم شامل کار شدن نمیتونیم. ما باید کوشش بکنیم که زبان یاد بگیریم. بعد از زبان یاد گرفتن باز ما میتونیم که تمام مسئولیت به گردن خود ما میشه که باز ما کار بکنیم، زحمت بکشیم و اینمی مبلغی که ما نیازمند هستیم به یک فامیل اونم رو برسیم.
So the problems that Aqeela is facing, is very happy. She's very grateful for everybody like Mohsen Makhmarbaf and Atiq Rahimi, the Iranian and the Afghan filmmakers who helped artists to be evacuated to France. And she's also grateful that the French government granted them asylum. So the challenges that she is facing right now, one is financial, because the money that the government is giving is not enough, and they basically left their whole life, everything behind in Afghanistan. So that's one problem. The other one is that the French language is an obstacle for them in terms of finding work. So although they have started learning the language, but she says it will take them a while to be able to speak fluent French and get into the workforce.
تشکر. فقط یک چیزی برشان باز تذکر بدین، یک چالش بسیار کوچک است که حل شدنی است، اما با وجود است که ما باید زبان یاد بگیریم. و یک پیشنهاد دارم، پیشنهاد ما او است که آرزو دارم که برای پذیرفتن ما در امریکا کارهای ما صورت بخشیده شود و بسیار علاقه داریم که در فرصت زمان، یعنی اول کارهای کسایی که در مشکلات است باید انجام شود، بعد از ما خب آمدیم داخل از این کشور در سیف هستیم، بعدا ما آرزو دارم که ادامه زندگی ما در امریکا داشته باشم در فرصت زمان.
She says that although her challenges are nothing compared to what is Reza going on through in Germany, but she's hoping that these challenges that she's facing right now, they will go away, and that their applications, asylum applications in the US will get processed in due time so that they like to continue life, the rest of their lives in the US. تشکر آقا جان. کسی دیگه از دوستا میخوای در مورد
Can I just ask briefly, thank you, Aqeela. I'd like to ask briefly, I mean, just to explain psychologically for you, you were literally, in August, you were on television almost every day in various TV shows or in a TV show, been working on your films, and now that whole life has been just upended and you have to start all over again. Can you speak to that? How are you coping with this reality?
مایکل میگه خودت اقلا جون پیش از که این تحولات بیایه در افغانستان منایسی یکی از معروفترین هنرپیشه‌های سینمای افغانستان بودی و روی فیلم‌های خودت کار میکردی و در تلویزیون، در پرده تلویزیون ظاهر میشدی و یک شبه تمام این زندگی خاتمه یافت و خودت فعلا در فرانسه هستی. از نگاه روانی با اینمی تغییر بسیار عجیب و غریب وضعیت زندگی و وضعیت چی رقم خودت کنار آمدی یا کنار کوشش داری کنار بیایی؟
Ask her to unmute, Jamal.
میکروفونت بند است.
اتومات بند میشه، ببخشید. خب این پیچیدگی وضعیت یک چیزی بسیار واضح است که من واقعا شاید شما از وضعیت روحی ما از گپ زدن شما مرا چون میشناسین بفهمین که وضعیت خوبی ندارم، مثلا مشکلات‌های روانی خیلی دامنگیر ما است، چون فامیل ما و مایکل خودش در جریان است، جمال جان خودت در جریان زندگی ما هستین که ما خواهریم، برادریم، پدر و مادریم که همیشه همراهشان زندگی میکردم، امیال در کابل به طور مخفیانه زندگی میکنن. حالت روحی و روانی من خوب نیست و چیزی که زیاد بر من کمک کرد و نگذاشت که من تحت تاثیر مشکلات روانی یا افسردگی برم، تقریبا 4 ماه درسای روانشناسی از طریق آقای محسن مخملباف داشتم.
So Aqeela is saying that the challenges, that the mental and psychological challenges that she is going through are immense. Not only what Michael said, that she was a public figure in Afghanistan, and then overnight she is now a refugee, an asylum seeker in France, and that whole life is gone. And that's one side of it. The other side is that Aqeela lived with her parents and her siblings in Afghanistan all her life, and now that she's in France, her family still lives in Afghanistan, and they are living in hiding because of the security issues that they're facing. So it is a lot to take, but she's happy that when they arrived in France, there was a kind of a workshop in terms of how to deal with the psychological after effects of the evacuation in France, and she took that course, and that helped her a lot.
Thank you, Aqeela. And I can't emphasize enough how many conversations I have. We think of all the legal, logistical challenges that people face, but let's face it, the psychological issues are extremely important, and we put very little, if any, resources into helping people cope with the traumas that they've been through. And this is also an important issue to be advocating for. I'm sorry, I see that Jonathan has had his hand up, and I apologize, it's taken a little bit for us to get to your question, Jonathan. Please go ahead.
First, unmute yourself, please, Jonathan. Jonathan, unmute yourself, please.
While Jonathan is working on that, let me just, I know there was a question.
Okay,
Oh, there we
is.
go, Jonathan. There you go.
You hear me? Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yes, thank you so much to our brothers and sisters from Afghanistan who have shared their pain and shared their experience to help not only themselves and their family, but all the refugees that existed in Afghanistan and the people of Afghanistan in general. And we need to hear this here in the United States, and we all know why we need to hear this. And because, you know, if it wasn't for the U.S. military, I don't think we'd have all these refugees, although we may, because, you know, there's a regional conflict, et cetera. You know, it's been going on many years, and the Taliban and so on. But I'm not going to talk a lot. I'm not going to say out of the top of my head. I'm grateful to hear from you. And I noticed in the chat, someone said to Michael Sheridan, let us know what we can do to help. And I would like to second that, because it appears that Michael Sheridan has invested a lot in determining just exactly on the ground what goes on, who the people are, what their needs are, and perhaps he knows. One thing I would like to say, absolutely, I'm an American citizen. All right, I vote. Okay, I'm a Muslim. Donald Trump tried to outlaw Muslims from coming to this country. And I helped right after 9/11. I went downtown and passed out cards that people could go to lawyers because they were asking everybody between 18 and 55 who was a Muslim to come in and re-report to whatever they were. And a lot of them were getting deported in the middle of the night. So I'm aware that it's a hard way to go. But I want to say this. We have the responsibility as Americans, as you say, to reach out to our elected officials. It could be, we could pass city ordinances or whatever. We can go to state level, we can go to federal, we can go to our senators and congresspeople, and we can point out to them that this is a commitment that we made to the Afghanis, and what the hell is going on right now. And we know that they're doing their best. They did evacuate people. You know, we saw the nightmare of evacuation, but they're doing their best. And refugees, you know, come on, let's be serious. With the climate crisis, there are refugees all over the world, and of course, with Yugoslavia and so on. So Palestine, I mean, there's a lot of refugees, but these particular refugees, the United States has an obligation. So it looks like Germany's stepping up, France is stepping up to a certain extent, and even the U.S. But let's get it in gear. Let's help these Afghanis as a community, as individuals who risked their lives for the United States, for the freedom of the world and all the rest of it. And look what happened. And now they're struggling, and financially they're struggling, it sounds like, in so many ways, and they can't even get an asylum visa. So
thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, thank you very much. And as in one of the main things the coalition is working on right now is the Afghan Adjustment Act, which replicates basically what was done after the Vietnam War in terms of trying to put some priority on the follow-up after the situation, to try and provide the resources and an understanding of who needs to be helped. And I put in the chat the link to a page with advocacy, and that advocacy includes things like the Afghan Adjustment Act, how we need to try and get our legislators to take this seriously and to take action now. There've been a lot of dragging feet and not taking steps to move these things forward. And of course, we have a very divided Congress, but public pressure is needed to try and get that. There was also a question in the chat about how we can help Afghans who have arrived in the US. And I encourage you to reach out to your to the refugee resettlement agencies in your community or in Boston. There are a number of them, and they are working and they need help. Their resources are extremely small. There's also the US government did start a new program called sponsorship circles, where a group of friends can come together and actually do what the refugee resettlement agencies are supposed to be doing, but they're so overwhelmed, partly because, of course, Trump slashed a lot of these things and they had to then slash their staff and budgets, and they're trying to rebuild. But these sponsorship circles are a wonderful way to be able to come together and create a group of people who will take on the responsibility of a family and help with the resettling and getting them relocated. So if you check in with your refugee assistance organizations in the community, that's the best way to find out how you can help with resettlement. I know that there was some other questions about issues of filmmaking in Afghanistan. I unfortunately, Bacher, if you are with us, please raise your hand or just speak out. I think we lost you, the maker of the last film. There was a question about how is it even possible that he made that film? It's extremely risky. He had to do it mostly without, of course, calling any attention to the filmmaking process. You cannot be engaged generally in filmmaking in Afghanistan at this point. Media is a highly restricted environment, and they have not shut down all the stations, which they did before in their last rule. But filmmaking is an extremely dangerous activity to be involved in, and Bacher has taken great risk not only in making the film, but in sharing it with us here. It's generally, of course, not available publicly because that would put him in great danger. Please raise your hand or just speak up if you have a question. I'm trying to monitor the chat as well, but please speak right up.
I saw a question, Michael, from Inez Hedges. I loved your film. How did you manage to film so that your subjects did not look at the camera?
Yes, this was particularly, I think, for Reza. Inez was saying that she was wondering how you went about being able to film that out in public and you did not have the subjects looking at the camera. Jamal, maybe you can help with that. And that's true for other people's films as well, in case anybody wants to talk specifically to their making process.
یک سوال که برای متوجه رضا بود این بود که در مورد ای که چی رقم توی فیلم ساختی گپ بزنن، مخصوصا این که شخصیت مرکزی فیلم طرف کامرا سایلنت، یعنی متوجه کامرا نبود که بسیاری از مستندها که خوب ساخته نمیشن شخصیت همیشه از مفهوم که کامرا هست توش. تو چی رقم فیلم ساختی و رابطه کامرای و شخصیت مرکزی برقرار کرده بودی که او اقدر آرام باشه که کامرا را حس نکنه. و دوستای دیگه سوال بگیرن باز مشکوام در مورد از این گپ بزنن در مورد فیلمای خود.
ما قبلا امروز از شخصیتی که ازش فیلم گرفتیم قبلا امروزشان صحبت کرده بودم و وضعیتی کاربارشان که بیشتر روی یک از سرک‌های پر ازدحام کابل است در مورد فعالیت‌هایش و کارها و اینایشان صحبت کرده بودم و برشان گفته بودم که ما میایم فیلم میگیریم و از شما این توقع رو داریم که شما زندگی روزمره خودتان رو دنبال بکنین، مثل از اینکه اصلا احساس نکنید که یک کامرای بالای سر شما هست و شما را دقیقاً زیر ذره نگاه میکنه. و این مسئله رو ما ازشان خواسته بودیم و شخصیت ما هم دقیقاً همون زندگی روزمره خودش رو دنبال میکرد. ما فقط چیز دخالت نداشتیم، تنها همون زندگی روزمره خود از این شخصیت ما دنبال کردیم.
پیش از اینکه کامرا را ببری کامرا را شروع کنی کار فیلم برداری، چقدر وقت همراه شخصیت مرکزی سپری کرده بودی در دوره تحقیق؟
فکر کنم 3 روز همراهش بودم.
Reza says that during the research process for the film, he spent quite some time with the main character, and they built this relationship that he was genuinely interested in the person's life and what was happening and all the problems that he had with the police and the traffic police. And Reza says that he also told him that he's interested to film what is happening in his life. There is no dramatization of any sort, so that he should just feel comfortable and just go about his daily life as if there's no camera. And that's the result that you saw.
Yes, and Reza, Aqeela, Wahid, Asib, you know, these folks did a remarkable job, and this is the beauty of local filmmakers, local storytellers, for them to have the access and to develop the relationships. You send somebody like me, which is the norm, unfortunately, in the media business of the West. You know, I can create relationships, and of course that's part of my job, but understanding the intimacy with which these folks are living their lives and being able to relate effectively is what this is about. And Aqeela, there was also a question in the chat in terms of the story that you documented about the arrangement. What do you think? You may know, you may not know, what the arrangement for the marriage of your character to a husband who is addicted or perhaps got addicted after they were married. What are the culturally the traditional ways of arranging a marriage like that?
آقا جانی سوال برای خودتان است میگه که شخصیت مرکزی فیلم شما همراه یک کس عروسی کردن که او معتاد به مواد مخدر بود. از نگاه فرهنگی یعنی یک نفر وقتی که میخواد عروسی کنه و اون کسی که معتاد باشه، یعنی مرد نه. از نگاه فرهنگی یک کمی در مورد از این گپ بزنیم که مشکلات چالش‌های از این چطور است. آقا جان هستن هنوز؟ I don't know if Aqeela
okay,
is still with us.
we might have lost Aqeela. I'd like to.
من یک مشکل پیدا کردم موبایلم. سوال پس میشه جمال جان بگوین؟
سوالی بود که در یک جامعه افغانستان، در یک جامعه افغانی، وقتی که یک دختر میخواد عروسی کنه و او پسر معتاد به مواد مخدر است، از نگاه فرهنگی چالش‌های از چی رقم است و در تحت چی رقم یک شرایط دشوار باید یک دختر قرار داشته باشه که آماده شود با یک مرد معتاد عروسی کنه؟ اگر در مورد از این گپ بزنیم، چون شخصیت فیلم شما در یک چالش دچار بودی.
بله. این نه تنها در افغانستان عروسی کردن با یک مرد معتاد در افغانستان مشکل ایجاد میکنه. این تنها در افغانستان نیست که شاید در بسیاری از نقاط دیگه از دنیای چالش برای زوجین ایجاد بکنه، کسایی که بعد از عروسی حتی معتاد میشن. و چالش عمده کسایی که دخترایی که همراه مردای معتاد عروسی میکنه موضوع اصلیش فقر است که ما ملت افغانستان خصوصا مردم هزاره فقیرترین از نگاه ثروت، از نگاه دارایی فقیرترین مردم کشور افغانستان هستند و اینا به خاطر کار کردن جوانایشان اکثرا بیرون از افغانستان خصوصا در کشور ایران رفتن و بعد از اینکه پس داخل افغانستان آمدن یا ازدواج کردن یا به خاطر ازدواج کردن پس آمدن با خود یک تعداد پول بسیار ناچیز را هم آوردن و اما در پلوی از محتاج شده آمدن و به خاطر از اینکه خانواده‌های فقیر میخواین که دخترایشان زودتر پشت بخت شوند به اصطلاح زودتر شوهر بکنن معتاد بودن در نظر نمیگیرن. این همیست که زندگی اردوش تباه میشه و چالش های بسیار زیاد، مشکلات بسیار زیاد سریرای اردو جوان به بار میاره و حتی جامعه.
So Aqeela says that in Afghanistan or elsewhere in the world, and especially in Afghanistan, the way the culture dictates is that a woman at a certain age should leave her parents' house and get married. And if you hit that certain age, which could be 23, 24, and then that is your prime and you have to get married. And now that's one side of it. The other side is poverty. People, usually men, leave Afghanistan to seek work in Pakistan and Iran. And when they return back to Afghanistan and sometimes to get married, they bring some money with them, but they also bring their addiction with them to Afghanistan. And if you are the family of the girl, and there are no other suitors for your daughter, and there is this person, yes, he is addicted, but he can, fit the bill, get married, and now you can say that your daughter is married. So that is almost an accomplishment for the parents that their daughter is married. But of course, to get married with somebody who has an addiction, it has its own challenges, some of which you could see in the film.
Thank you, Aqeela. There's a Catherine Volk, if you'd like to. It's obviously not Catherine, but maybe
it's Rudiger.
Mr. Volk.
Rudiger.
Yeah, please.
Rudiger, please.
Hi, sorry not to change my name. I'm Rudiger Volk. My most precious question, I have 1,000 questions, but is always the tribal question. The question is basically, there were Afghanistan 1,000 years before we came, or before the Western civilization with their democracy, which we call democracy, and it was a stable tribal society, relatively stable. Of course, they had also war and so on. But I'm always thinking, and I'm appalled by our arrogant estimation that democracy is the best version and a befreeing version of any society on earth, and it can be unitarian applied to any society. And so, what is your intake of your filmmaker? That maybe tribal societies have a place even in modern societies, and democracy, the question is if we have even democracy, and democracy will work. It might be the best one, but that's only for us. How would be tribal society in modern world? And if this could not be taught to the Western world by maybe filmmaking?
سوال که آقای رودیگر دارن به فیلمسازان یه است که افغانستان پیش از این که یک حکومت با دموکراسی باشه، یک حکومت قبیلوی بوده و در اون زمانی که حکومت‌های قبیلوی در افغانستان برای صدها سال جریان داشته، افغانستان یک صلح نسبی را می‌دیده و شاید قبولاندن دموکراسی غربی بر افغانستان با ارزش‌های افغانستان شاید سازگار نباشه. در این مورد، در مورد صلحی را که حکومت‌های قبیلوی در افغانستان میاره، نظر دوستان چی است؟
Yeah, and I just want to mention that Jamal, you should feel free to pipe in, not only translate, but if you have a thought about that, this is an ancient issue. And also Jafar, Basir, all of you who are with us, feel free to join in if you have any opinions about this issue or others.
بسیر خودت هستی در مورد مسئله تاریخی قبیلوی چیزی بگویی؟
Aqeela is also raising her hand. Go right ahead, Aqeela, if you like.
Yes, Afghan.
پیچیدگی وضعیت و نابسامانی کنونی افغانستان محصول کار اینمی حکومت قبیلوی در سالیان دراز بوده و است. تا وقتی که اینمی اخلاق دموکراسی برای یک جامعه درست فهمانده نشه و مردمش قبول نبکنه که اخلاق دموکراسی را بفهمه، هیچ وقت صلح دائمی در اون کشور آمدنی نیست. و ما و شما شاهد ازی هستیم که افغانستان هیچگاه کوشش نکردن و طی اینمی 20 ساله که دقیقاً به یاد ما و شما هست همین نسل، هیچ وقت اینا دموکراسی را تحلیل نکردن، اخلاق دموکراسی را اینا نآموختن و افغانستان به یک گودال از مرگ، از خون ریختاندن، از چور، از چپاول، از وحشت گیر کردن. من فکر میکنم که تا وقتی که دموکراسی بازم بگم تحلیل نشه و اخلاق مردم نفهمه، فکر نکنم هیچ کشوری دست به دموکراسی بیافته.
Aqeela says that one of the problems that has put Afghanistan in this chaos is because of the tribal system of governance in the past, and if the people of a country do not understand and respect the values of democracy, then there will never be a democracy or peace in that government. And my point of view is kind of similar to Aqeela's. The tribal government, for example, if you look at back since the modern state of Afghanistan was established back in the 1700s, ever since it has been governed by tribal groups, and one of the tribal groups are the Pashtuns that ruled over Afghanistan ever since the modern state was created. And that came through the civil war. We had a period where there was a ruler who was not Pashtun. And then after that, Karzai was a Pashtun, Ashraf Ghani was a Pashtun, and now they handed over the government to the Taliban, which is another Pashtun group, right? So if you look at it, we had a democracy by name, but it was always led by tribal groups. In a way, Afghanistan never had a democracy. It was there in name, but it has always been tribal rules. And as you can see, tribal rules doesn't really work.
Thank you, Jamal and Aqeela. It's such a complex part of the world, and one of the biggest problems is that as Rudiger mentioned, there's a lot of arrogance outside that thinks we know how to fix things for other people. And as much as storytelling needs to be local, our notion of helping others needs to be driven by actually locally led and owned initiatives. So much of what we spent billions of dollars on over the last 20 years in Afghanistan was all our idea of what was good for Afghanistan, rather than actually Afghans-led initiatives, which I happen to know, having done some journalistic work there myself, there are really wonderful and very, very solid Afghan programs that were being developed in terms of economic and social development work. I want to come back to one question that I saw that John Goodman asked in the chat about the filmmaking again. Maybe ask Hasib that he might speak to this in terms of his subject is this question of how did you choose your subjects? What John was asking, what led you to choose the particular subjects that you did?
در چت یک از دوستا سوال کردن که ایده میشه که دوستا تا هنوز گپ نزدن، حسیب، وحید، باقر، اینا اگر هستن هنوز جواب بدن که چطور امی سوژه فیلم چی رقم انتخاب کردن، شخصیت مرکزی سوژه فیلم چی چیزش در او وجود داشت که شما او را انتخاب کردن. حسیب جان انمیوت که بخیر خدا.
سلام به همه، امیدوارم همه‌تون خوب باشین. درباره فیلمم که اگر من با یک مجتو چگونه مذهبی انتخاب کردم، چون هر افغان از یک خاطره بد از زمان طفولیت خود دارم. چون من زمان طفولیت خود که من این حالت را میده بودم که بدترین حالت درس میخوانم، خصوصا مثلا زمان اول طالبان آمده بود. اول طالبان آمده بود چون من پاکستان مهاجرت کردم، پس اومدم در مکتب رفتم که اما وضعیت خشونت آمیز ما درس میخوندیم. وقتی من در قریا رفتم که میخواستم که یک سابجکت خوب پیدا کنم، یک سابجکت خوب پیدا کنم که اما وقتی که مایکل با ما تعلیم داده بود که گفت شما تو یک استوری داستان پیدا کنید که بیننده فیلم شما چرا ببینه، شما چی رو نشان بدید در فیلمتان. یعنی نظریاتی که در ذهن ما بود، من رفتم وقتی که این داستان پیدا کردم دیدم خانه بود که قسم میکرد وقتی من در قریه آمدم من و دخترای من مکتب نبود. و چیزی که من در ذهن خود داشتم که طفولیت ما که من خودم درس نخوندم، دوباره آمدن به درس و خشونت یوم و اونمو خاطرات در ذهن ما آمد. وقتی من مرد بودم اون رقم به چالش درس خوندم، دخترها رو چطور درس میدم. وقتی در داخل زندگی زیما شدم که دیدم که این رفته دخترها مکتب جور کردن، او را یک قلای بسیار کهنه را که از خودشان بوده، از بیادرش بوده، او را گرفته جور کرده مکتب و تشناب و یارم برشون که صرف به خاطر دخترایی که در قریه باید یا درس بخونن که فکرشان باز شود که یعنی درس خوب چیز است. اما بیشتر از اون آقایی که سوال کرد دختر قبیلوی، اینمی قبیلوی است چون که ما را در جهل نگاه کردن، ما نتونستیم که درس بخونیم و ما راه خود پیدا کنیم که کی ما را به ما دروغ میگه، کی به ما روشنی میده. و اینا ما به خاطر انتخاب کردم که بیشتر میخوای ترجمه کنی یا که من کلش بگم؟
نه من فکر کنم که اول قدرش ما ترجمه میکنم. Hasib says that when he was younger, during the first regime of the Taliban in the 90s, they had to flee Afghanistan and go to Pakistan. So his education, his going to school at that time was interrupted, and then spent some time in Pakistan, which the school system for the refugees was not as good. And then when he returned to Afghanistan, and he faced the challenges of the interruption and how difficult it was to get a good education or go to school. And then when he joined CSFilm for the filmmaking workshop, and after talking to Michael and learning about how to tell a story for film, that those memories of childhood and education and how important it is came back to him. So that's why he started looking for a subject that was working in education. And he went to this village and met up with this teacher that you can see in the film. And as he was also making a point about how in the villages, that old way of thinking is still exists, which is also a side effect of living in a tribal system for so long, that if the dominant tribal group, which are the Pashtuns, they think that education is not good, especially for women, then over hundreds of years, everybody else in the country thinks the same, right? So that's why you can see how challenging it is for a woman to go around the village and encourage parents to send their kids to school. Whereas if it was not like that, parents should be willing to send their their kids to school even without anyone coming knocking on their door. نصیب جان دیگه چیز مونده یا بریم به نفر بعدی؟
یک کمک ادامه میت میشه واسه
بفرمایید.
به خاطر که ما پیشتر گفتم که مایکل گفت که $1 بیلیون تا و گفته مردم امریکا $1 تریلیون در افغانستان مصرف شد، ولی ما هیچ به نتیجه نرسیدیم. ما باعث یک فیلم ساز کسی که مثلا ما ترنینگ دیدیم و در بسیار کمپانی‌های بزرگی مثلا ما کار کردیم، من روزی که افغانستان سقوط کرد من خودم شاک شدم، حیران ماندم که چی کنیم دیگه خود راهی به ما نیست، کدام طرف بریم چی کنیم. ما این حال سوال اینجاست که وقتی کل از افغانستان برآمد، افغانستان فیل شد، کل چیز رفت از بین. این حال ما باعث یک فیلم سازان ما نتیجه پیدا کردیم که آخر یک قدر پول افغانستان مصرف شد و افغانستان ضرب صفر شد، هیچ چیز دیگه نموند، هیچ چیز نشد. این مشکل ما در کجا بود که باید این مشکل ما پیدا کنیم؟ وقتی که ما خیستیم برآمدیم، کلاگی برآمد. این حال سوال ما است که کسایی که مثلا امریکا
ما همین گپ تو را به گپ پیشتر مایکل گفتی را گرفت میتونم اگر دوستای دیگه باز در قسمت نظر داشتن میشه که گپ بزنم. Michael was just mentioning how the solution to the problems should be local. It shouldn't be, forced top down from the other communities like the U.S. And as you can see in the film that Hasib made, this was in late in 2010, right? And the U.S. had been there almost a decade, and millions of dollars went to Afghanistan. But as you can still see, where these kids go to school, they don't have, they don't have a proper classroom. There's no chairs and nothing. So you think where that all that money go? It's not bottom up, but it's top down approach that didn't work. And that's another thing that is Hasib says he captured in that film.
Beautifully
Anybody
said.
else?
Thank you. Both really important points, Hasib, and again, from my perspective, speak to this importance of the local, and again of just understanding that Hasib's education, personal education experience as a refugee as a child, informed the story that he told during our time together with our project. You just don't get that when we're constantly flying in and bringing in our special reporters from outside or storytellers. There's just something that cannot be had from that outside experience versus the internal understanding, personal understanding. So I know that we've gone a long time here, 2.5 hours almost. So thank you so much for everybody joining us and for your questions, for your participation. I can't thank all of the Afghans enough for making the time and coordinating with us to be here together. I know we didn't get to hear from everybody, but it's great to have us just together like this. And I appreciate so much the Community Church of Boston organizing this and providing this opportunity for us. I put in the chat again the advocacy link. I'm trying to, I do update that regularly. And also just a link to CSFilm.org. We're always in need of financial support in terms of both the immediacy of our evacuation work, but also the ongoing programs we're trying to do around these local voices, training and production, storytelling work. So support is always welcome. So thank you. I don't know if Dean would like to say a final word, but thank you all. And thank you especially. It's so wonderful for me to see each of the Afghans' faces and to be with you. So thank you again.
To wrap up, this is Dean again. I want to thank all these marvelous filmmakers who have been with us and enriched us in ways that Hollywood blockbusters any other kind of fancy media cannot do. Just take us into the lives and the homes of people in a land far away. It's just a wonderful gift. I want to tell everybody that these links will be in the YouTube chat. If there are other films that you would like us to put links to, we'd be glad to do that and have it either on the YouTube channel, if that's appropriate, or else on Community Church's social media and website as well.
And that's an excellent point, Dean. All 10 of those Afghan films are, you can see them on the CSFilm.org website.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that link we'll be putting that link out for people to see these films. Jamal, I also want to send you a special word of thanks for your interpreting and translating. I know how hard that is because I do that myself, and it's usually a job that doesn't get appreciated. So I want to just send out my just heartfelt thanks to you for being that important telephone line, that important link with all these folks here on this program today.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome, and I hope we can be in touch and we can continue with more programming along these lines. This is just so rich. Let's declare the meeting over and say amen. 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 Hallelujah. Amen. 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 Hallelujah. And thank you to our Afghan brothers and sisters being with us and enriching our lives in this way. We'll see you all later. And thank you, Michael. Bye.
Thank you, brother.